Some heroes don't wear capes. They carry the quiet strength of those who've watched love conquer death. When Keanu Reeves walked onto the Tonight Show stage with that serene presence and gentle wisdom that had made him Hollywood's most beloved soul, nobody expected him to reveal the most heartbreaking chapter of his healing mission. Jimmy Fallon had planned a thoughtful interview about Keanu's latest film. The audience was ready for the philosophical insights and humble charm that always came with a Keanu Reeves appearance. But what Keanu was about to confess would silence Studio 6B and prove that sometimes the most powerful performances happen not on movie screens, but in hospital rooms where dying children need to believe that survival is still possible. The cameras were rolling, the audience already captivated by Keanu's magnetic humility, and then he spoke 13 words that changed everything. I visit dying kids because I watch my sister fight cancer and survive. What came next wasn't just television, it was a revelation about hope, trauma, and the sacred responsibility that comes with witnessing someone you love defeat the unthinkable and using that miracle to light the way for other families walking through the same darkness. Keanu Reeves had always been known for his enigmatic privacy and unexpected depth, the action star who chose introspection over self-promotion, who found meaning in philosophy rather than fame. But what audiences didn't know was that Keanu's understanding of mortality had been shaped not just by personal losses, but by watching his beloved sister Kim wage a decade-long battle against leukemia and emerge victorious, and that experience had awakened a calling to bring hope to children and families facing the same terrifying journey. The Hope Visits had begun 11 years earlier during a particularly reflective period when Keanu was contemplating the randomness of survival and the responsibility that comes with witnessing someone you love beat impossible odds. Kim's recovery had been miraculous, surviving multiple relapses, experimental treatments, and moments when doctors had prepared the family for the worst. But her ultimate victory had left Keanu with profound questions about why some people survive while others don't, and how survivors can honor those who aren't as fortunate. Kim's cancer battle lasted almost 10 years, Keanu later explained. There were times when we thought we were going to lose her, moments when the doctors had exhausted conventional treatments and we were facing experimental therapies that might not work. But Kim survived, and her survival taught me something important about hope, that it's not just a feeling, it's a responsibility to share with others who are walking the same dark path. Pediatric cancer affects roughly 16,000 children annually in the United States, with survival rates varying dramatically depending on the type and stage of cancer. While treatments have improved significantly, many children still face terminal diagnoses or prolonged battles with uncertain outcomes, leaving families trapped between hope and despair as they navigate impossible medical decisions. When you've watched someone you love beat cancer, you understand both sides of the equation, Keanu said. You know how terrifying the diagnosis is, how helpless families feel, how the uncertainty can consume everything. But you also know that survival is possible, that miracles do happen, that fighting is worth it, even when the odds seem impossible. Keanu's first encounter with a terminally ill child had been through a chance meeting at Children's Hospital Los Angeles, where he had been visiting a friend's child who was receiving treatment. Walking through the oncology ward, Keanu had been struck by the number of children and families facing battles similar to what his family had endured with Kim, but many seemed to be fighting without the hope that had sustained his family through their darkest moments. I met this 8-year-old girl named Emma, who had been fighting leukemia for 3 years, Keanu remembered. Her parents were exhausted, terrified, running out of hope because Emma had relapsed twice and wasn't responding to treatment. When Emma's mom learned that Kim had survived leukemia, something shifted in her expression, like she was seeing possibility instead of just medical statistics for the first time. That conversation had revealed the unique value of hope delivered by someone who had witnessed survival firsthand, Emma's family had been drowning in medical terminology, survival statistics, and clinical discussions that focused on treatment protocols rather than the human experience of fighting and potentially winning against cancer. Emma's mom told me that hearing Kim's story was the first time in months that she could imagine her daughter growing up, Keanu recalled. Not because the medical facts had changed, but because survival became real instead of just theoretical when it came from someone who had watched it happen. From that encounter, Keanu had begun visiting pediatric cancer wards regularly, not as a celebrity making appearances, but as someone who could offer families something that medical professionals couldn't provide. Proof that survival was possible, hope rooted in lived experience rather than statistical possibilities. Working with child life specialists and social workers, Keanu had developed an approach that brought Kim's story of survival directly to families facing similar battles, creating connections between cancer survivors and current fighters that transcended typical patient support programs. These visits aren't about me being famous, Keanu emphasized. They're about families meeting someone who has watched cancer lose, who can describe in detail what recovery looks like, who can provide hope based on experience rather than just optimism. Over 11 years, Keanu's hope visits had reached 127 terminally ill children and their families across multiple hospitals. Each visit was arranged through medical social workers who identified families who might benefit from connecting with someone who had witnessed similar battles ending in victory. I've met kids fighting the same type of leukemia that Kim had, parents facing the same impossible treatment decisions we faced, siblings watching their brother or sister go through what I watched Kim endure, Keanu said. Each situation is unique, but they all share this desperate need to believe that winning is possible. The visits incorporated detailed discussions about Kim's treatment journey, her setbacks and breakthroughs, the family's emotional experience throughout her recovery, and most importantly, Kim's current life as a healthy adult who had beaten cancer and was thriving. I show families photos of Kim during her worst days, bald, so thin, connected to machines, and then photos of Kim today, healthy, strong, living a full life, Keanu explained. For families who can't imagine their child ever being healthy again, seeing visual proof of recovery can be transformative. The approach worked because it provided families with concrete evidence that survival was possible while acknowledging the reality of how difficult the battle would be. Keanu's presence offered hope without minimizing the genuine challenges families were facing. I worked with this 10-year-old boy named Michael who had been fighting brain cancer for 2 years. Keanu remembered with obvious emotion. Michael's parents had been told to prepare for the worst because his tumor wasn't responding to treatment. The whole family was preparing for Michael to die. The breakthrough had come when Keanu shared details about Kim's own moments of treatment failure and how her family had navigated periods when medical options seemed exhausted. Michael's family learned that setbacks didn't necessarily mean defeat, that experimental treatments had saved Kim's life, and that fighting was worth it even when conventional wisdom suggested otherwise. Michael's parents told me later that our conversation was the turning point in their approach to his treatment, Keanu said with pride. Instead of preparing for death, they started fighting for experimental therapies. Michael qualified for a clinical trial that ultimately saved his life. The most profound impact came when children and families realized that their battle was part of a larger community of fighters, that survival was not just possible, but had been achieved by others who had faced similar challenges. There was this 12-year-old girl named Sophia who had been fighting leukemia for 4 years, Keanu shared with obvious love. Sophia was exhausted, ready to give up because the treatments were so difficult and her progress was slow. But when she learned about Kim's 10-year battle and ultimate victory, Sophia found new determination. Sophia had been inspired not just by Kim's survival, but by learning that recovery could take years and that slow progress didn't mean failure. Sophia's family learned to celebrate small victories and maintain hope through extended treatment protocols. Sophia finished treatment 6 months ago and is now cancer-free, Keanu said with joy. She wants to become a pediatric oncologist because she says kids fighting cancer need doctors who understand that survival is worth any amount of suffering. Several children who had been visited by Keanu had gone on to survive their cancers and were now pursuing careers in medicine, oncology research, or patient advocacy, using their experience as survivors to help other families navigate similar battles. Tonight's appearance on The Tonight Show was supposed to focus on Keanu's latest action film, which explored themes of resilience, hope, and the power of human connection in the face of impossible odds. Jimmy had planned to discuss the film's philosophical elements, maybe explore Keanu's approach to choosing meaningful projects, definitely tap into the wisdom that made him such a respected voice. The interview had started with Keanu's characteristic thoughtfulness and humility. He had shared insights about his new film, discussed his approach to roles that explored the human condition, and demonstrated the quiet depth that had made him famous for being more than just an action star. But when Jimmy asked about what hope meant to Keanu and whether he'd encountered situations that had deepened his understanding of human resilience, something shifted in Keanu's expression. The question had been meant to explore his philosophical approach to his craft, but it had touched on something much more personal that Keanu had been considering sharing publicly for the first time. "You know, Jimmy," Keanu said, his voice taking on unusual weight, "hope isn't just something you feel or think about. Sometimes hope is something you carry from one person to another, especially when you've witnessed miracles that other people desperately need to believe are possible." The audience grew quieter, sensing that Keanu was moving into territory that was more personal than his usual thoughtful observations. "That sounds like you have some experience with that," Jimmy said with genuine interest. Keanu was quiet for a long moment, his characteristic stillness taking on deeper meaning. "My sister Kim fought leukemia for almost 10 years. Watching her survive taught me something important about hope, that when you've seen someone beat impossible odds, you have a responsibility to share that hope with other families facing the same battle." The studio was completely focused on Keanu's words now, the energy shifting from entertainment to something much more profound and personal. "Your sister survived leukemia?" Jimmy asked softly, clearly moved by this revelation. Keanu's eyes filled with tears, a sight that was always powerful when it came from someone known for his emotional restraint. "She did. After relapses, experimental treatments, moments when we thought we were going to lose her, and that survival taught me that hope is something you can give to other people, especially families who are drowning in the same terror we experienced." The audience was completely silent now, witnessing a side of Keanu Reeves that transcended his celebrity, the raw humanity of someone whose personal victory had become a source of healing for others facing similar traumas. "Jimmy, can I tell you about something that's become the most important work of my life?" Keanu asked, his voice growing stronger despite his tears. "Please," Jimmy replied, clearly understanding that something profound was being shared. Keanu took a deep breath and spoke directly to the camera. "For 11 years, I've been visiting children's cancer wards, sharing Kim's story with families who are fighting the same battle we won. 127 terminally ill children and their families, bringing them hope based on experience rather than just optimism." Jimmy's expression changed completely as he grasped what Keanu was describing. "You're visiting dying children?" "I'm visiting families who need to know that survival is possible," Keanu replied with quiet conviction. "When you've watched someone you love beat cancer, you understand that hope isn't just emotional support, it's evidence. These families need to meet someone who has witnessed the miracle they're praying for." Tears were streaming down Jimmy's face. "Can you tell us about one of these families?" "Emma was 8 when I met her," Keanu said, his voice becoming tender. "Fighting leukemia for 3 years, multiple relapses. Her parents were preparing for the worst, but when I told them about Kim's 10-year battle and ultimate victory, something shifted. Emma's mom said it was the first time she could imagine her daughter growing up." Keanu paused, gathering himself to continue. Emma finished treatment 2 years ago. She's now 10 and cancer-free. Her family credits our conversation with giving them the strength to keep fighting when medical statistics suggested giving up. What happened to Emma? Jimmy asked through his tears. Emma wants to become a pediatric oncologist because she says doctors need to understand that miracles happen to real families, not just in medical journals, Keanu said with obvious pride. She understands that survival stories need to be shared, that hope is something you pass from one fighter to the next. The audience was openly emotional, many people crying as they witnessed this revelation about Keanu's private work bringing hope to society's most desperate families. Keanu, how has this work changed your understanding of your sister's survival? Jimmy asked. It's taught me that Kim didn't just survive for herself, she survived so that her story could give hope to other families facing the same terror, Keanu replied with profound understanding. These hospital visits are how we honor her victory, how we make sure her miracle becomes medicine for other people who need to believe that beating cancer is possible. As the segment concluded, something unprecedented happened. The entire studio audience rose in sustained applause that lasted over 5 minutes, but it wasn't just appreciation, it was recognition of something sacred, acknowledgement that they had witnessed hope transformed into healing action. Keanu's revelation became one of the most shared Tonight Show segments in the program's history, inspiring conversations about cancer survival, the importance of hope in medical treatment, and the responsibility that comes with witnessing miracles. Most importantly, Keanu's disclosure had shown that sometimes the most powerful thing about surviving tragedy isn't the survival itself. It's using that survival to light the way for others still walking through darkness.